Well, aloha kakahiaka. Good morning, everyone. At least good morning from Hawaii. You are on the Aloha Friday Hawaii Real Estate Show. I'm your host, Peter Kay, and welcome. I'm glad you're all here. We got a great show for you today. We've got a our lineup over here is going to be, we're going to start out with a news and market update. We're going to go over some current news and see what our market is. Of course, it's always about your questions. So we're going to be going over those. We got some diamonds and deals, some properties that we want to show you folks that are kind of really beautiful or amazing and great deals, or some combination of both. And we're going to close some motivational thoughts. Your questions are the key. So why don't we do this? We're going to go into we're going to go into a little bit of a warm up over here. We want to warm up the microphones and give everyone a chance to kind of come online while we make sure our audios are sounding good and looking good. And speaking of sounding good and looking good, Heidi, why don't we start off with you? I've got my ceremonial coffee mug filled here. Heidi, what's going on in Maui? What's going on with you? How's the coffee today?
I'm doing great. We celebrated 4th of July this week. I saw some great fireworks in Lahaina town over the water. They put on a great fireworks show, and it was super, super crowded and just fun to be out. And of course, enjoying my morning coffee. I was just checking out, there's a coffee festival on Maui called Seed to Cup, and it's coming up July 16th. So I'm hoping to be able to go check that out. I'm excited because I love coffee. So,
Hey, what's it called? See the coffee, or what's it
no,
called? See.
Seed to Cup. It's at Maui Tropical Plantation on July 16th, and it's this all-day event. So, anyway, I'm going to go check it out.
That sounds good. Actually, no, I got to ask Dylan a question. Dylan, warm up the microphone over here. And I want to ask you a question about. I'm thinking. I've been, I've as I've disclosed previously, I've become like I've incrementally become a coffee freak, a coffee snob, right? So now I'm at the place where I've got my burr grinder. So you grind the beans only once, and I got my French press, and I do precisely 43 grams of coffee, and I vacuum pack it in advance. In my bags, so I could kind of have like the exact perfect cup. So the next step, Dylan, I'm thinking about doing is like, wow, I wonder how much green coffee could you save? Is green coffee cheap? And should I buy green Kona? I'm thinking about buying green Kona, green beans, and then baking them at home. But anyway, Dylan, giving you your update. What's the Aloha shirt? What's going on the Big On? How are you doing?
Well, you can definitely do that. My mom did that for years, where she had like 6 coffee trees in her yard, and it just produced enough coffee just for her personal use. So she would pick it, put it in a old pillowcase, and you run it over with the car, and that pulps it. Then you got to soak it. So she would do the whole process at home just for her own personal use, and then you just put it on a baking sheet in the oven, and you can roast it exactly the way you want it. So that's definitely doable. I don't know what the going rate is for green bean, but it's definitely cheaper than roasted bean, and you can definitely get it. And you can get the good stuff in the pea berry or whatever you want. So yeah, definitely worth looking into. But beautiful day over here on the Big Island. This is a Sig Zane, the other Big Island designer that I'm always repping. And today is my 16th wedding anniversary, so it's a big day. 20 years together with my wife. I feel super old, but I guess hopefully I don't look as old as I actually am. But yeah, it's been a long time. So good day.
Not to be grateful for. Congratulations, man. Absolutely. So you guys have been together for 20 years, and this is your 16th anniversary, yeah?
Yep. July 7th, 2007 is when we got married. 777. It's easy to remember. So
congratulations. No small task. And Heidi,
I'm still working. I'll miss the show. So
hey, man, I'm sure your wife understands that. And, maybe we could bring her around and say hello, but yeah, whatever. Just send her our best wishes for your folks' 16th anniversary. That is no small task. Being married at all. But Heidi's still beaming. She's still in the glowing phase. Heidi, how many months has it been now?
Our 6-month anniversary is coming up next month. Our 6-month wedding anniversary. We've known each other 10 years. But just got married in February. So yeah, it's great.
Okay. 10 years and you just got married, which is great. So, okay. So that gives me hope for my daughter, who's been with her boyfriend now for 6 years. And we're like, okay, what's up here? What's up here, folks? So okay, all right. That gives me hope, Heidi. Dylan, you mentioned you guys were married on 7/7. So my wife and I were married. Well, we've just closed our 31st anniversary this year.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and but more remarkably, that here's how special our wedding is, Dylan. It's so special that the federal government made a holiday
So
on our
Juneteenth.
anniversary, Juneteenth.
Okay, got
Juneteenth.
it.
Juneteenth is our anniversary. So the federal government, finally wised up and recognized the sacredness of our birth, because Juneteenth means June 19th, and that's when we were married. So thank you, President Joe Biden, for recognizing the sanctity of our marriage. It's been great. And Joan is with us, Auntie Joan. Hey, Auntie Joan. That photo, by the way, gang, that Auntie Joan's got, her profile photo was at an awesome party on Islander Ohana get together that we did at La Mariana, which is like the coolest place. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that place. It's really, really cool. It's just one of these. It's like a awesome, hugely awesome tiki bar right on Keahi Lagoon off of Nimitz Highway. It's really, really a cool place. Anyway, Auntie Joan says, happy birthday, happy anniversary, Dylan. Indeed.
Thank
Happy
you.
anniversary, Dylan. And Steve Boyer is with us. Hey, Steve, welcome back, buddy. He gives a congrats to Dylan. Hey, folks, if you're just joining us, oh, yeah, they're all coming there. Give Dylan throw a congrats to Dylan and let us know where you're coming from. Barbara says, congrats, Dylan. Easy day to remember. Peter, Juneteenth, don't know about that. Yes, Barbara, it is true. Juneteenth was declared after our wedding, after our anniversary, and I say it's an honor hour of anniversary. At least that's my story, and I'm kind of just sticking with it. All right. It is 9:02. Let's rock and roll. We got some news I want to kind of cover, some interesting stuff, some fun stuff. Let's kind of see how this all goes for everybody. So gang, surprise, housing is more expensive, right? Shock, right? Are you shocked? A couple of things that were kind of interesting, and it kind of made me think about a topic for today to talk about affordability. So fewer than a third of the households can afford to buy a single family home. Less than half can afford to buy a condo. And interestingly enough, there's some interesting things. So evictions are kind of on their way up, but so are rents. You would think that if evictions are up, that rents would go down, but no, evictions are up. Oahu rents continue to soar. Looks like Oahu rents were up 25% over the past during the past 5 years. Over 25%, and 4-bedroom apartments are up 22%. Huge. And Maui County, Heidi, you're not exempt. Maui County has the highest share of severely rent burdened households. Whatever that means. I think it means that it's really expensive to rent in Maui. 50% of the 50% of the state's renters. No, I'm sorry. Maui has the most severely rent burden in the state, with renters paying more than 50% of their income towards rent. So that's a problem. So maybe we're going to talk about that. Actually, I got a topic for us to talk about, and that's with the Maui. So Maui rents no ka'oi. So no ka'oi is a Hawaiian term, means number one, and there's a classic line of Maui is number one. Maui is best. Maui no ka'oi. Maui is best. And so Maui is also best in severely rent burdened households, unfortunately. Turning into a cesspool. So I saw an interesting story about there's some interesting stuff going on that you may have seen this. It's actually caught the national news. I saw it on Fox News, AP, etc. You may see these stories kind of go Fortune magazine. You may see this going around where they're talking about that rising sea levels are causing the water table to go up, and Hawaii has a lot of homes on Hawaii, and many on the near the ocean are using cesspools. They don't use municipal sewers, and a lot of what's occurring is that because the water levels are going up, and because they have a cesspool, some of that cesspool effluent is leaking out and going out into the water, into the ocean. At least that's what they believe is happening, and they think it's going to get worse. And so it's going to be an issue. And we've talked about this here and there. I think the only thing I wanted to bring to everyone's attention is this sort of rising sea level thing. Rising sea levels have been brought around. People talk about this, about climate change all the time, about rising sea levels. I want to show you all a graph. And this graph is rising sea levels. And if you look at this graph, it's pretty darn consistent. If you look at the years 1880 to 2020, we've had rising sea levels. rising sea. And if I tried to find a graph, and you think folks, you folks can try to maybe Google and try to find another one. If you go to sea level graphs going 10,000 years, it's that same line. Sea levels have always been rising, always. Whether they're due to climate change or not, the science, I think, well, I've yet to be convinced that they can show that the graph is because of something other than just sea levels are rising. That's beside the point. The issue is that Hawaii is on a volcanic island. The Hawaiian Islands have been shrinking since they were made, millions of years. So the fact is that the shorelines have always been eroding. Sea levels have always been rising. And this issue with cesspools is going to be a problem. Whether it's due to climate change, I don't know. I'm unconvinced. Anyway, that's my 2 cents about that one. Visitor industry. So visitor industry is cranking away. We're at 95% of where we were pre-pandemic. We're at 94.6% of pre-pandemic levels. It's pretty much almost been a total recovery, which is remarkable. I don't think that they expected it to be happening quite that fast. And then finally, BFFs, best friends forever. Hiroshima and Pearl Harbor. This is kind of cool. In a symbolic move, Pearl Harbor and Hiroshima sign or is it Hiroshima? I'm not too sure. Maybe Dylan of his Japanese ancestry can tell me if it's Hiroshima or it's Hiroshima. Sign a historic sister park agreement, in a historic agreement between two places that were devastated by World War II 8 decades ago, forever connected through pain and healing, through reconciling and cooperation. So that's kind of cool, right? A mark for peace. So that is the news update for that. Let's get into our market segment, and I want to kind of hear about what you folks have to share in our market update. But first, we got to say we have to kind of give a couple of shout outs here. Barbara says, stick with that. Barbara, in response to my Juneteenth claim that our anniversary was named a federal holiday, and with Juneteenth, says, stick with that story. That is my story, Barbara, and I am sticking with it. And Paul says, my guess that with military presence, the 4th of July in Hawaii is off the hook. Off the hook in terms of what? Off the hook in terms of fireworks? Because let me tell you, it's something interesting, right? And Dylan goes this. Dylan will testify to this. Fireworks in Hawaii on the 4th, not a big deal. Not that big. I mean, we have a couple. I mean, like Heidi mentioned, there's fireworks off Lahaina, and we had fireworks in Kailua, which is near one of the military bases. But the big fireworks in Hawaii is New Year's. That's where fireworks are, like the bomb is in New Year's. So Paul, not sure what you mean by off the hook or not, but anyway. And Sue says, happy welcome, Sue. I haven't seen you. New presence on the show, at least from my awareness. Happy anniversary, Dylan. Excellent. All right. We got that out of the way. Dylan.
Sue's a longtime follower. We had lunch last time. She was out here, and they're gonna get a nice piece of land on the east side of the island one of these days. So we're working with
Welcome, Sue. Well, Sue, we're super glad that you're. Look, if you got some questions for us now while you're here, please don't hesitate to ask it. But you've got a better source. You had lunch with Dylan, and that beats as much as I like the live show, lunch with Dylan beats the live show any day of the week. All right, let's go clockwise. Dylan, and then Heidi, give us the. Oh, by the way, in case you're wondering, where is Ashley? Ashley, unfortunately, is not able to make it with us today. She is sorely missed. She texted me this morning. That was kind of a last minute thing. So, Ashley, we wish you well, and we'll see you on the next show for sure. Hope everything is all right. All right. Just want to make sure in case people were wondering where is Ashley. Dylan, let's start with the market update. I know you sent me some slides. You want to talk about some stuff, folks. We're going to talk about. We're going to do a market update. We're going to talk about kind of what's going on with our markets. Dylan, what's going on with the Big Island, and what do you want to share?
Well, on the Big Island locally, it's funny how the theme just kind of continues, right? And so we're back to pretty much a normal market. The amount of inventory has not recovered. So we're hovering around 1,800 properties for sale. And that is lower than it was 6-8 months ago. So market activity has picked up. And we actually, the big kind of story, and I have a chart that kind of shows this here on the island that I'll put a market update on my YouTube channel soon. But we were back up to 488 sales for the month in June of last year, which was more than June of the previous year. So the slowdown is pretty much over. And we saw a steady decline from June of last year when interest rates started going up, and we bottomed out at 288 sales in January, was kind of the bottom of the number of sales. And then that's now been trending back up. And so we also have some, if we can go to those slides, some national data. And I think it's important to look at kind of national data and then look at local markets and see, is there some correspondence? Is there correlation? What can we draw from it? And so this is national month over month, seasonally adjusted home appreciation. And so if you see kind of July to December, January, there was, and this is from 3 different sources that are, analyze the real estate market. So nobody's kind of perfect, but if you look at it, the trends are pretty much the same, right? And all 3 of these sources. And so January was the last month there was any negative appreciation, and appreciation for February and the March data. The data is kind of lagging, on these national sources, but we're back into positive price appreciation. So it seems like we're out of the worst of it, and it wasn't even that bad. I mean, the worst was pretty minor if you're looking at, less than a percentage point in terms of the worst price depreciation that we had. But what's driving this is important. So if we go to the next slide.
So Dill, before we go to the next slide, now are these bars, is this for the Hawaii market only, or is
this is national? This is national average data. Yeah. So obviously, I don't think we did not see that type of depreciation here in Hawaii, but this is kind of across the entire nation.
Got it. Okay. Next slide, please. All right.
Yeah, and then so this is important, and this is kind of the new term in the real estate market data, lingo, is the unicorn years, right? 21 and 22 being the unicorn years, because we as humans have a very short memory, and we kind of base our current situation off of like recent past instead of long-term, context of what was going on. But if we look at the number of pending listings, so listings that are for sale, and this is nationally again, we had a crazy jump, right, in 21 and 22. But if you look at today, 460,000, it's actually more than we had in the years 17, 18, 19, which were very normal, real estate years. There wasn't anything weird going on in those years. And so, yes, things are slower than they were in the last couple of years. But if you put it into context, it's actually still pretty much on par and a little bit stronger of a market than it was. And what's really driving that is, if you go to the next slide, this is the big one we always got to come back to. And this is what I just started off with the Big Island market update. And this is true. Maui's even worse. Oahu's the same. There's no inventory. There's like nothing for sale. So when you look at the number of homes that are for sale, again, the unicorn years got really low because there was so much activity, and there are more listings now available than there were during those years, but we're still at significantly lower levels. I mean, if you look at the pre-2020 years, we were over 1 million listings available in the country, and we're down at less than 600,000 right now. And this is true of pretty much every market. That's what we're seeing here on the Big Island, is we're at like 40% less listings than there were in the pre-COVID years. So that constraint of inventory is what's continuing to keep prices high, and then now driving prices back up. So again, we've been going back to, I mean, if anybody's waiting for some huge drop off, 10-20% drop off in prices and waiting to buy, I mean, there's no indication that that's going to happen. And this is a primary reason, is just a complete lack of inventory across the board.
This is a great collection. This is a great summary. Hey, folks, if you have any questions about the stuff that Dylan has just shared, please pop it in the comments right now, and we'll be sure to kind of hit your question. I think, I was kind of clicking through these, Dylan, and what really kind of struck me was this one here. This was like, you're kidding me. Like, it really, really shows you that those 2 unicorn years were like really freaks, right? Because you're right back at the same exact number. But then again, the homes for sale, the inventory is still way down. So quite interesting. And of course, not the fact that we've come back, basically kind of interesting. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff to be a lot of stuff to take in, and a lot of stuff to consume. But so Dylan, what would you say then is like, what's the summary here? What's the headline? What's the headline about all this?
I almost think the secret tip here is buy now while interest rates are still high, because once the interest rates go down, it's going to get insane again. So you can always refinance in the future, but the only saving grace right now for buyers is that interest rates are high, and there's a lot of buyers sitting out because of interest rates being high. But I don't think they're going to go down, below 5%. No. I mean, we might come back to, high 5, low 6% kind of stabilized interest rates for the next few years, but interest rates are high right now. I mean, they're peaking above 7%, in some markets and some programs. But that's your advantage, is that once interest rates come back down to low 6s or maybe high 5s, all of these buyers are going to flood back into the market, and you're going to be back into a situation where it's multiple offers on everything. There's nothing for sale, and you're going to be way worse off, and you're potentially going to pay more for that house because the price will be higher. Even though the interest rate will be lower, the price of the home will be higher. And so, net, you may actually save money with a higher interest rate right now and locking in that home price. and not waiting a year or two from now when interest rates come back down.
I think that's a really good point, is that, you could always refinance if rates go down significantly. You could always refinance, and now you got a lower payment for that same house, and you bought it at a lower rate. Yeah. So interesting. I'm going to pass that on to my daughter, who's she's beginning to look at the market and making some kind of a decision. So that's a really good tip. Interesting. Heidi, let's move. Dylan, is there anything else that you want to share about the big house?
That was plenty.
All right, Heidi, what's happening on the Maui side of things? How are things going? What do you have to report on? What do you think about what Dylan showed, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. Well, Dylan, thanks so much for showing that. I think it's really good to have that macro overview of what's going on all over. I'll give you some stats from Maui. So our June 2023 stats put out by the Realtors Association of Maui show that median sales price for all properties was up 4.7%. And a trend that we've been seeing on Maui this year is single family home prices are more or less stabilizing. I mean, of just what sold June 2023, the median sales price was actually down, but it's still over $1 million. And condo prices have been appreciating, continue to appreciate quite a bit in 2023. Of what sold June 2023, the median sale price for a condo in Maui was $984,450. So single family home and condo prices are almost converging if you're just looking at last month's statistics. And one of the reasons, which we touched on before, is when single family homes become more expensive, more people look at the condos. So we're kind of seeing a convergence of those prices. Days on market are up a little bit for single family homes on Maui, up to 116 days on market. That's from the list date to the date it actually closes. So that does include all the time under contract, which could be 45 to 60 days. For condominiums, it's up to 127 days. So nothing really unusual if you're looking at historical data going back the past 10 years, but longer days on market than in our most recent last couple year market. Condos are closing within 98.7% of the list price, which means on average buyers are able to negotiate just a little bit, and homes are closing within 97.5% of the list price. So buyers are on average getting to negotiate about 2.5%. But we still have quite a few properties that are closing at or above list price. This is just, an average of everything that's happening.
So Heidi, same question that I asked Dylan. What would be, what's your headline? If someone says, "Hey, give me a one-liner of how would you summarize the market," what would that be?
I mean, I would say when you could afford to buy and you're ready to buy, it's a good time. I mean, we see no data indicating that there's going to be a big reduction in prices. And the main reason is it's very difficult. New construction is very difficult on Maui. It's one of the most difficult places for developers or to build new homes. On Maui, I mean, the environment and preserving the natural beauty of the island is something that's really valued, which that is important, but it also does mean it's more difficult to build homes, and we just don't have a lot of land that's able to be developed. So, with no new inventory, I just don't see prices going down. Anytime in the future. Our buyers come from all over. Maui is such a desirable place to live. We have buyers from Canada, buyers from the West Coast, buyers from the East Coast, buyers from Texas, buyers from other islands. It's a desirable place to be, and inventory is low. So when you can comfortably afford to buy, that's the time to jump in the market and be in it long term.
So I'm kind of catching this from the two of you is that The market itself is seems to have stabilized. If anything, Dylan, your charts indicate that there's some still upward price movement on that side. The inventory is low, and I think that's a big indicator. Inventory is low, and so that is definitely not. That is going to, if anything, that's going to put an upward a pressure for prices to rise because inventory is low. Supply and demand, laws of economics. Uh, and the interest rates ain't going down anytime soon. Interest rates ain't going down anytime soon. I mean, if anything, they're going to go up, if anything, because the
Yeah.
Fed's right.
That's been the
Fed's
trend
not,
actually. The last week, is interest rates have gotten worse. Yeah,
yeah,
so they're not
Fed's
getting
not
better.
letting up. The Fed's not letting up. I mean, here, there's no. I mean, in my view, there's no way the Fed's gonna relax and bring interest rates down. There's no way that's gonna happen. It's just a matter of if they're gonna hold it or make it go up. And so, um, this is probably the lowest right now. You're right at that lowest price point that homes are going to be at before either the lack of inventory or rising interest rates are going to drive the prices up. So by that definition, the universal rule of real estate, the best time to buy is right now. Always holds. It always holds. So great. Hey, gang, if you have any questions, pop them in the chat. I'll pop them in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. We're going to move on right now, and I'm going to kind of go here for a little station break. Look, if you got here through the newsletter from livinginhawaii.com, then you are good. If you did not, if you found your way through here without being on that newsletter, somehow find your way through Facebook or otherwise, get on the newsletter. Go to livinginhawaii.com. A dialog box will pop up. Enter in your email address, and then you'll be invited to the future shows that we hold every other week. There's all kinds of other comment. We have photos of your weekly dose of Aloha, which is a beautiful photo, articles, new videos, new content. You want to be a part of all that. All right, let's move on. I was thinking, gang, that with this, a lot of these questions, on the housing prices that you saw, you heard those stats I threw in the news. I was thinking, why don't we kind of hit this like classic big question here, which is, how do you, how do you offset? What are some kind of tips that you could share with people on sort of the high cost of housing? And now everything's relative, and we know that you can't have a $100,000 discount on a $500,000 condo. So there's nothing crazy that you're doing. And I'm not saying, find foreclosures or whatever, but what are some things that you can do that are sort of like on the edges, right? What kind of edge cases can you do to get the most for your money, to make sure that you're getting the best possible price for the purchase that you're making, to save a few bucks on closing? Where could you shave a few dollars here and there to kind of add up to make it worth the time that you're going to have to spend to kind of make those savings? So that's my question. Why don't we go, Dylan, and then Heidi, share us, what kind of tips would you have? It's like, I want to buy right now. I'm right there. I've got, I'm qualified. I'm ready to go. What can I do to kind of make the most of my dollars? You're muted.
Yeah, I think the first one, and we may have talked about this before, is
we may have. That's right.
lowering your expectations on what you need, right? And if you're relocating to Hawaii from somewhere else, especially from a climate that isn't super hospitable, people normally need more space in their house because they spend more time there. And if you have that expectation that you need a comparable amount of space here, then you're overpaying for too much square footage. And so that's something that you can really reduce the cost of a home or a condo, is just, you can live very comfortably in less than 1,500 square feet in Hawaii, and having a big lanai. I mean, even a condo, most condos are less than 1,000 square feet, but it's a lot of room. They might have a big lanai, and you're not going to spend a lot of time. You're going to spend a lot of time outdoors doing other things. And that's an offset in the cost of housing too, is to me the cost of entertainment and the cost of doing things. It can be less because we have so much free natural activities, in that you can participate in, and you don't need to pay for entertainment and going out. And I think the city lifestyle is a lot more expensive than it is here, where you can just go and grab some Subway sandwiches and watch a sunset on a beach. And, instead of paying $200 for a fancy dinner, you can pay $20 and just grab a couple of beers and you're good to go. Right. And that's probably more entertaining and enjoyable than going out to a fancy steakhouse or something like that in a city. So there's ways, but the big one is don't expect to have like 3,000 square feet or even 2,500 square feet, because it's really unnecessary. And you can offset your price per square foot, because the price per square foot can get expensive. $500 sometimes per square foot, even more, $700 per square foot, depending on how nice the house is. So that's a big one. Buy small, you'll be okay.
Buy small, bring down that's a really good point, and that's a way you can save a whole lot of money, is by bringing down the cost of that, getting a smaller square footage. Because yeah, you're very right. You don't need what you don't need the kind of space.
And the one thing I would add too is I don't know, I'm going to release a video on this, but a piece of advice I give young home buyers, right, or first time home buyers, is your first house is never your dream house. And that may apply even in a relocation situation where you plan to be here for 20 or 30 years or even longer, right? If you're relocating maybe in your 30s or your 40s, you don't need to buy your dream house, the first house. Buy a small condo, buy a really small house, maybe in a neighborhood you don't necessarily want to be in, or a further drive away from where you're going to work, and let that equity help build up and provide you the ability to upgrade in the future. And that's always the case. I think that's a big thing that holds people back is they have this vision of the house that they want, but they can't afford it during that point in their life. And sometimes you got to make concessions. And that was definitely the case in my personal situation. The first house I bought was on the east side of the island. It's not where I wanted to be, but I was in my 20s. I had to buy a cheap house. That house appreciated. I made $60,000 in equity, bought my house in Kona. It was an old house, not the house I necessarily want to be in forever, but stayed there for 6 or 7 years, made $100,000 equity, bought the house that we're in now, which is closer to our dream home. But if we didn't start 15 years ago at a house that we really didn't want to be in on the other side of the island, we would have never got here, right? So don't let that hold you back. Sometimes you got to start with a starter home, even in a relocation situation.
That is an excellent point. It's more important to get in the market, to buy something in the market, than to get like the killer dream home that you think that is going to be the end result. No, it's not. And in fact, go ahead.
I've worked with, especially if I look back in the last couple of years, worked with so many and clients from this show that bought when they weren't ready, right? They had a kind of a leap of faith. They maybe did a refi, or they sold something off in the mainland. They bought here, even though they weren't going to come for 3 or 4 years, because they saw the advantage of buying now and just letting that house appreciate. And hey, when they're ready to come here, it's been rental for a couple of years, and they may have $100,000 in equity, and they could sell that first one that they bought and then upgrade to something better or closer to what they really want. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Is don't have the expectation your first house got to be your dream house.
Yeah, that is a really, really, really good point. Is get something, get anything, and in fact, I would even recommend
for your daughter too, right? For your daughter too, like just get anything, or a cheap condo, whatever it is, get in. Yes,
get anything, anything. Absolutely, yeah. For my daughter too, get anything. Just get what you can afford. It's more important to get in the market than to buy. And look, and for someone who's moving to Hawaii, for example, I would recommend I would have said that's almost the imperative. Just get anything, because chances are you're going to need a few years to figure out where you want to end up really living in Hawaii anyway. The actual district that really best fits your needs. There's no way that you're going to know that. I mean, you could presumably, but you're going to need to kind of go around the neighborhood and kind of figure the place out. It's going to take years for you to figure out exactly where you want to live. Like where we're living right now, I didn't have any idea that I wanted to live here when I first got here. There's no way.
And you started with a leasehold condo, right?
I started with it. So since you asked, since you mentioned it, I started with a leasehold condo and today not a very good neighborhood, right? Not a very good neighborhood. A leasehold condo in Kalihi. Of course, I used to call it Aloha Heights back then, because I didn't want to tell people I lived in Kalihi, but I lived in Kalihi. I had a leasehold condo in Kalihi. It was sort of like the bottom of the market, but you know what? That's how it all started. So indeed, that's how the journey began. Heidi, what's your take? What do you tell people who kind of, what's your advice to kind of, hey, these are some easy things that you can do to kind of bring down your costs, make that next home more affordable in Hawaii, in Maui?
Yeah, well, I can share a common thing that people do to offset the high cost of housing is actually have an ohana or an ADU rental unit on their property. So you can live on a property, rent out a portion of the property. So maybe, you're getting an extra $3,500 a month to help you pay your mortgage. That's really common here. And I'm actually going to show a property later that has that option. Also what people do is live with family or have roommates or rent out a room. Now, all these things are not going to work for everybody because this might not fit the lifestyle you're looking for. But if the question's just, I mean, things you can do or what people do here, those are definitely some options. And then just if you're working, just make more money.
There you go. Oh, geez, Heidi, why didn't I think of that myself? Make more money. There you go. That's the way to kind of take care of it. Excellent, excellent advice. Make more money. Simple. I look. I think the Ohana unit, what we call an Ohana unit, an addition, a dwelling unit, is definitely a good idea. Of if you can afford that level of home to have that rental, that second rental property. To offset that for sure makes a lot of sense. We got a comment over here. Let's thanks Barbara for saying this. In heard of condos for sale at Kamala Beach. Leases will expire in about 5 or 6 years, but will not be renewed. What then happens to property? I thought leases would always be renewed. First of all, what is Kamala Beach? Is that on the Big Island or is that on Maui? You guys heard? I've never heard of Kamala Beach before. It's the first time I've ever heard of that. Kahala Beach. Thank you for that. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you for that clarification. So I don't know if the Kahala Beach leases specifically will expire or not. I think I have heard that. But I think the more important question is, does a lease have to be renewed? And what happens when if that lease does not get renewed? Well, the quick answer is it does not have to be renewed. A lease is a lease, just like the way to think about this. And Dylan, I'm not the realtor, but I'm going to throw the layman's answer, and please add into this and correct me where I'm wrong. A lease is a lease. It's like when you lease a car. When you lease a car, you have a 3-year lease or a 5-year lease. When you're done with that lease, you have to give the car back. There's no automatic renewal of that lease. In fact, at least in the auto industry, you have to give the car back. You have to return the car. It's not your car. You're leasing. Same thing with leasehold. You don't own the property. You're leasing the property. Now, the leases are longer. It's a 20-year lease or a 30-year lease or whatever lease or a 5-year lease. But when that lease is up, the land goes back. The land and the condo go back to the landowner, and the landowner can do whatever they want to do with it. So, Barbara, when the lease expires in 5 or 6 years, your property is no longer yours. Now, they may rent it to you. You may be able to rent. You don't know what's going to, but you definitely, your lease has expired. The lease is over. Dylan, Heidi, you want to add anything to that? Anything that's of that statement you want to add on to, or additional wisdom?
That's the big risk with leasehold, right? I mean, there's a reason why it's cheap. I mean, those leases are probably very, very affordable because there's hardly any time left on them. And I always I find the simple definition for leasehold is you're buying the right to use the property like you own it for a specified period of time. You're not buying the property. You're buying the right to use it for a specified period of time. And so sometimes that works for people and sometimes it doesn't. There's basically 2 situations that I think where leasehold makes sense. The first one is that you view it from a purely business standpoint, where you run the numbers, you look at the cost of ownership, the cost of the HOA and the taxes, and say you can vacation rent the unit and you can turn a profit, and your initial investment, you can make back a return that's acceptable, and you figure all that stuff out and you look at it as a business investment. The second reason is if you don't care about a normal real estate investment, you just want the cheapest possible property that is desirable to you, and you don't mind not passing it on to your heirs. You don't mind about appreciation. It works. There's a lot of folks in their golden years that say, hey, I'm 75 years old. There's a 10-year lease here and I can live oceanfront for, half the cost or less than half the cost of what it would cost for a fee simple. I'm going to do that. And when the lease is over, I don't care. I'm just, I might not be around by then, or, I'll move on at that point. But that's a situation where it can make sense, where you're just looking at it from a quality of life standpoint versus a investment standpoint. So.
Yeah, exactly. Heidi, what do you want to add about, to the conversation about leasehold?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when the lease ends, you do not have legal ownership anymore. And there will be something called a surrender clause in the lease documents that you get to review. In practice on Maui and throughout the state, often leases are renewed. It would be difficult for a developer to come back and do something different. But when you're buying leasehold, I mean, you have to read what's in the legal documents and accept that as this is a limitation of your ownership. you might get an opportunity to buy the land in the future. They might extend the lease, but there is no guarantee on either of those things. So you just kind of have to be okay with whatever happens. And then, I mean, there have been cases on Maui where it came down to the end of the lease and then they added another 30 years. And yeah, all of a sudden your property's worth way more. But you can't buy a property 100% counting on that because nobody's going to give you a legal guarantee that that's going to happen. So you're basically buying something at a lower price because you're taking on more risk in the very long-term ownership of what happens to the property.
Yeah, well said. And look, on the renewal side is that leases can and do get renewed. However, they get renewed with sometimes a very, very significant price increase in the lease rent because you also pay lease rent along with that property. So all kinds of there are risks. You just need to know fully what they are, going eyes wide open. Hey, look, as we mentioned offhand, my first property was a leasehold property, but I had I bought it knowing I had 30 or 40 years remaining on the lease. So I had plenty of time, and I sold the property within, I think, less than 5 years after I bought it. Thankfully, a significant increase in equity, and there was still plenty of time for the next buyer to put to buy it with the mortgage. So you just got to go in eyes wide open, read the contract carefully. The contract means what it says. Dylan, go ahead.
Just one more important detail, and I think maybe this is why Barbara has this belief, is that every leasehold property is different, right? There's like a standard across the board. And one of the largest lessors in the state is Kamehameha Schools Bishop Estate. And so when we talk in context of them, a lot of times they almost always renew, because if you're a good steward of the land and you're farming the land, these are primarily agricultural leases. They will renew it because they want to keep you on the land if you're being responsible and you're a good steward of the land. When it comes to condo leases, it's case by case basis. They're all owned by different people. What their plans and intentions are in the future are different. The contracts are going to be different. So you really got to dig into it, and you cannot kind of have a blanket, overview or understanding of all leases, because they're all going to be very different and unique based on who the owners are.
Yeah, well said. Well said. All right, so I think we kind of hit this one good. Barbara, if you have any more questions, or if any of you have any questions, this is kind of your chance to kind of pop it in the comments. Meanwhile, we're going to move on over to our Diamond in Deals section. We're going to talk about properties that Heidi and Dylan have picked out that they think are worth mentioning. So let's kind of roll into this one. Heidi's got something in Kihei, Maui. Heidi, what an amazing sunset. What do we have here?
So I showed this home recently. It has a great ocean view. You can see the sunset from that upper deck. This is a home where you could live in the upstairs portion of the home and rent the downstairs portion of the home, either as an ohana or the entire first level. The house also sits on a great lot. It's a big lot where you could have a pool right in front. You can kind of see it, that picture on the bottom. And you're in Kihei, not too far from all the great beaches and not too far from the ocean. You also have a big 2-car garage off street, which is really nice. So I thought it was worth mentioning at 1699.
This is really cool. And, the other side, too, that you could do with this as well, Heidi, you talk about affordability, and Dylan, on your end, you talk about, don't buy the kind of, you won't need the kind of square footage that you thought that you needed on the mainland. Is like, buy this place, move into the studio and rent out the 3-bedroom, rent out the 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and rent out the garage. And now you are kind of styling big time. For that is a great part. I love that sunset shot is like amazing. What a great picture with the rays of sun on there. Really cool. Is that a sunset on the other side there, Heidi? That second photo in the stack, or is that just another sunrise view a different way? I'm just kind of curious about that. I don't know if it's where the property.
Well, it's the sun starting to set there.
Okay, all right. So you get sunrise and sunset. So it's an interesting house. You get both views. Awesome. All right, let's move on to Dylan's. But before we do, so Barbara kind of popped in. Any good retirement communities on Oahu? Barbara, hold that question for the next show in 2 weeks because we're going to have Ashley back and she could talk about that. Hold on to that one because I'd like to have her speak to that. Okay, let's hit this one. Let's go to there we go. There's Dylan's property. Dylan, what have you got to share with us today?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight, affordability on the island too, since we have these, $1 million properties, which may not be in the range of many people. And so this is a perfect example of what you can get on the east side of the island in Hawaiian Paradise Park. 510, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. It's like 1,400 square feet, built in 2001s. So almost brand new. Great yard. You got lots of space. You got an acre where you could plant fruit trees and whatever you want. Then there's plenty of room to spread out. It's not dense. You don't have to look at your neighbors. And if you look at the interior photos, I mean, it's a luxury home, granite countertops, luxury plank flooring. I mean, it's an absolutely gorgeous house. And so very much in the range of, the normal buyer. And when we're talking, I didn't plan this, but, when we're talking about lowering your cost of housing, you may not have to, right? I mean, if you're willing to live in a little bit of a more rural area, and this is about 20 minutes outside of Hilo, so it's not super isolated or anything like that. And it's a growing, strong community that had seen property values increase pretty significantly over the last couple of years. So great investment opportunity, and you can get a very nice home for $500,000. I mean, this is kind of more of the upper end. If you get an older one that's 10 or 20 years old, I mean, the prices are going to be sub $500,000. So lots of options.
It's funny, Dylan. I love that. I definitely need to take a drive through Hawaiian Paradise Park.
It's very different than you remember it, I'm sure. It's very gentrified now.
That's what I was gonna say, man. Because the last time we drove through Hawaiian Paradise Park was 30 years ago. It was like 1992, literally 31 years ago. And I'm sure it's come a long way. But it was, I mean, even by then, well, as you said, it's gentrified. This is really a nice looking property compared to what I remember Hawaiian Paradise Park was 30 years ago. But this is a really nice property.
Because of our lack of new development on the Big Island, we have very few like tract development homes, right? Large scale developments. So what people who want to build homes do is you gotta buy land, obviously, right? And you build a house on it. And land is very expensive. On the Kona side, a lot like this would cost you probably $400,000. And so almost the cost of the house, right, would be what just the cost of the land would cost you. And on the Hilo side, a cost of 1 acre you can get for $50,000 to $75,000 in an area like this, and then you can put up a home for a couple $100,000, and you can turn a profit building houses. On the west side, you can't do that because it costs you so much for the lot that you've got to build a multi-million-dollar house on it to make any type of money. And so most of the new construction is happening in these areas where you have small contractors. They're not large scale developers, and they're just buying lots one at a time and putting up homes on them. And so a lot of the best, newest inventory are in these more rural areas because the cost of land is affordable.
As this is a kind of really fun gang, right? So we're talking about the affordability part. Heidi says, "Hey, make sure you get do something affordable. Get a house with an ohana." And magically, Heidi, your property has an ohana unit, which is a great idea. Dylan, yours is about
people don't. I hope they believe us. There's zero pre-show. We just show up and do this. So
just show up and do this. It's all by magic, gang. It's all by just by pure, truly coincidence. And then Dylan brings up a property for $500,000, which is certainly affordable by these standards. And on that same note, Dylan, I want to ask you is that these days with Hawaiian Paradise Park or other areas, what is the cesspool or septic tank situation? So here in Hawaiian Paradise Park, there's new construction. Are they making a big deal about that now? Because cesspools used to be okay. I don't know if they're still okay now, or if it's like septic tanks now only, or what the story is.
Yeah, I believe it was since 2019 is when the law went into effect. But anything new construction since then is going to have a septic system. So if you're you may have septic or cesspool, and it's kind of based on how old the home is. The older the home gets, the more likely it is to have a cesspool. And kind of, the last 25 years or so, people started going towards septic tanks. But anything, new construction in the last couple of years is going to have a septic system.
Got it. Hey, so before we move on, I wanted to mention that really quick on that septic system. So for any of you watching right now, if you got any kind of ideas or connections or whatever with that sort of industry, get a hold of me, because I think there's going to be a massive opportunity. So what's going on, gang, is that right now what's happening is that the the industry, there's increasing legislation that is going to be forcing a lot of the Hawaii homeowners who have cesspools to switch to something else that's going to be more sustainable, either connect into the county system, the county sewer system, which would be the easy answer, but that's not universally the case everywhere. The more likely answer is going to be switch to something like a septic tank. But I think there's going to be, Dylan and Heidi, I think there's going to be a massive opportunity for somebody, because it's such a huge problem, right? Because you can't easily switch. You just can't turn a switch and go from cesspool to septic tank. And even if you could, even accessing, some of the homes are not even accessible to have like a truck pull up next to the house to do whatever work is going to need to be done. It's going to be a big, huge issue, and it's really, really expensive. Somebody is going to come up with an innovative, out of the box, left field solution, and they're going to make a ton of money. It's a huge opportunity. So anyway,
another economic opportunity that we're seeing now is because of the increase in the last few years of septic systems. We don't have enough providers who are pumping septic systems here on the Big Island. So I'm getting feedback from clients and agents that they're like calling 5 or 6 companies and everybody's booked up and nobody's getting back to them. And so that's creating some constraint too, is that, hey, you want to have a septic system, and then what happens? You can't get it pumped because there's not enough people to pump it. So, that's a separate issue. But that's a kind of unintended consequence of stuff like this, right? You start forcing people to do something and the economy hasn't caught up to actually service that. And, we'll see what that overall long-term impact is.
Man, that's going to be a cool business too. And that's
if you don't mind sucking shit, man, you're going to be okay. A lot of money to be made there.
If you don't mind sucking turds, you're going to be in really good shape, because, talk about something that's going to, a nice recurring. I'm sorry, gang. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. This is the way my brain always kind of thinks. And, I always kind of see things in terms of opportunities, but, it's a great business, recurring revenue you can get if you can come up with some sort of an innovative solution to kind of swap it all out. Man, that would be a winner. All right. That sounds like fun. That sounds like something that would be kind of worth trying to look into. All right, hey, we got a few minutes. Let's see if we can take a question here. How about let's see. How about let's say this one over here. Well, you know what? Here's a question that keeps coming up. So let's just kind of hit it and see if it's still relevant in today's market. So how much over asking? So we had a question from James who said, hey, as someone who's new to the Hawaii market, I'm looking for a condo on the lower price scale under 500,000. How much over asking price should I be prepared to pay? What's the case with over asking prices? Is this still happening? Is there a hot spot now where prices are still hot and people are still getting over asking, or has that just kind of pretty much calmed down now? It's like no longer the case. Heidi, why don't you go first, and then we'll have Dylan hit it.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's constantly changing and adjusting based on the market. It also depends on how is the particular property priced. Is it overpriced? Is it priced correctly? Is it underpriced? On Maui, in general, about half of condos have still been closing at asking price or above. I had shared the statistic earlier that on average, condos are closing around 98.7% of their asking price, which shows that, if you're averaging everything together, there is some negotiation happening on that other 50%. So I would say, I can't really answer this unless we're looking at a particular condo. There are certainly times where you do need to be aggressive to get the property because it's a really great property. There's other competition, but I'm also seeing quite a few closings where there is negotiation happening in price. And the most important thing is understanding the competition and the demand. If there's nobody else offering on this condo and you're offering on it, you have more chance to negotiate. Now, if there's 3 or 4 buyers that want it, that's a whole different story. So have to take it on a case by case basis. And it's always going to change, day by day, week by week.
Heidi, I was wondering, is there any kind of a property that sort of stands out, or a property profile that kind of stands out in Maui with condos that, these kinds of properties are pretty hot. They're pretty, they're high in demand. Is there any kind of a feature, or is it always just really a combination of things? Or is there anything that kind of sort of really stands out in Maui that makes it a really desirable condo?
Properties that allow vacation rentals that are in a lower price point seem to be really, really hot. So something that's five, six, seven, 800,000, which is kind of an entry level price for a condo that allows short-term vacation rentals and is close to the beach or on the beach. That's a pretty hot segment of the market right now. We've seen a little bit more cooling in the market on the residential non-vacation rental condo side.
So James, if the condo because James said he's looking for the lower price scale, actually under 500K, which may not these days may not even be in the market. I don't know how that reflects, Heidi, but if you're looking for something like that, that's a vacation rental. You may have to be being over asking because it's going to be a hot property. That's possible. So kind of keep that into consideration. Dylan, what stands out on the Big Island as far as, are there any kind of hot properties going on? What's hot in the market that might kind of get an over asking price, or how does that work the way you're seeing it?
I totally agree with Heidi, case by case basis, but this is why it's important to work with somebody that knows what they're doing, because we're going to know right off the top of our head. Like, if there's a property that you like, we're going to look at it and say, hey, this is something we're going to have to come in hard and 10 grand over asking price if you really want this thing. A question my brother always asks people, which is great, is on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad do you want it? Because that's how I'm going to gauge what price we need to offer, right? If you're at a 5, then hey, let's just go with asking price. But if you're at a 10 and this is like the 1, then we're going to have to come in hot and do what we can to get it. So you kind of have an expectation across the board, because you still have sellers in this market that are overpricing property because they think they're in the market from 12 months ago that they missed. But if it's priced properly, you're still going to be in a competitive situation, and you just need good advice. You just need expert advice.
That is an interesting kind of aspect, right, about the real estate market that just kind of reoccurred to me, is that you're in a market, you're in a true market competition. It's not like you're buying like a pound of fish at Foodland, where you walk in, you order your pound of fish, and off you go, right? There's a property here, and there's competition for it, right? You're not the only one that wants to buy this property. There's others who want to buy the property too, and it's just a matter of who's going to pay what, and who's going to make the moves, and who's going to kind of, like you said, be more aggressive. It's a different animal. It's a true market situation. I forgot all about that for some reason, and you mentioned.
And then we've talked about before, right? The intangible aspect of who you're working with, because that's a thing that we constantly win on, is people want to work, a listing agent wants to work with a buyer's agent who is competent, who's going to get the job done, who's going to do their part of the transaction, that's going to keep their client calm and in line. And so all things being equal, that's a deciding factor in a lot of cases. Is, hey, if there's 3 agents and I haven't heard of 2 of them, but I know this guy and I've worked with them 6 times before, and all they need to do is do this on their offer, and we'd go with that one, you're going to get that inside information, make that adjustment, and then you're going to win that deal. So that's a big piece of it in a competitive market that makes a difference, that is outside of terms of the contract.
That is an extremely good point. I mean, and I would say in many ways that's even more it's even more important to know now, because I think having this, we live in an Amazon world, right? We live in this kind of, we buy in an Amazon world. It's actually the coolest thing in the world. I was just freaking out about it the other day, right? It's like, I'm on my phone, I pull up Amazon, I find this thing that I need. I need like, a fork, right? I need something really minor, right? I forgot what it was, but it was really a minor piece, right? I click, I said buy, and it shows up on my doorstep in 2 days. Right. It's just like, that is just like freaking magic, right? That is absolutely magic, right? It's like this thing that I just clicked on. I tap on the screen and something shows up on my door.
So here's the other side of that. That's detrimental to in this business, is people do the same thing with their real estate agent.
That's my point.
And I'm, I'm a beneficiary of this because we do a lot of online lead generation. So you're lucky if you just come in through an online lead source and you get one of our people, you're going to be okay. But people will do that where they'll just like randomly click around online and select. And that's why what's great about this show and the people that watch is they're actually doing their research and building, a relationship and actually evaluating your credibility and your expertise, because yeah, you just don't want to one-click your real estate agent. It's not a good way to make a humongous investment.
I mean, that's the point, right? You don't, your real estate agent is not an Amazon screen. There's a difference, right? There's a difference between, X, Y, and Z. It's a huge, look, I get a bunch of, I get questions every so often where someone will email me and say, hey, do you know someone who does, does construction or, does carpentry? I just bought a home here. And I said, well, did you work with one of our people? Because what got you? No, I got some. Okay, well, that's who you got to go talk to, because, that's who kind of got you into this thing. I'm not going to help you out of it now. Too late. Okay. So anyway, yeah, that's a really good point. Heidi, is there anything you want to add to this before we move on?
I think Dylan covered it. Yeah, it really does matter what agent you work with, because there's so much more than price in negotiating a transaction, securing a property. And just back to the original question too, how much over asking price for a $500,000 condo? I mean, I know properties that are listed $300,000 or $400,000 that are overpriced right now on Maui. So it's not just because of price point. It really depends what it is, where it is. There's so much more to know about a property. So yeah, work with a good agent. Reach out to one of us.
Reach out to one of us. Work with somebody who knows. Work with somebody who knows what they're doing. Work with somebody who knows what they're doing. And thank you, Aloha Supernova. You're better than Amazon. Always enjoy your content and insights. Well, thank you very much. It's what makes the content great is you folks. What makes the content great is comments like yours, Aloha Supernova. So thank you very much for sharing that. We really appreciate it. All right, we're almost out of time. It is time to move on to the final part of the show here. We're going to move into our closing thoughts. And look, if you've got we're going to have some words, some inspirational thoughts over here. If you've got some of yours, please share them. Your inspirational thoughts are really as much more fun, frankly, in many ways than ours. But let's move on over here. Dylan, what's yours and what does it mean to you?
This is one that just come up recently, and it actually applies to some of the show today, is that everything works and nothing doesn't. And what I understand this to mean is, especially in business, I get a lot of requests for advice on business and stuff. And should I do this? And should I do that? Or should I take this action? Or should I take that action? And my response is always, any action is going to work if you do it consistently and at a high level. When you do nothing, it's definitely not going to work, right? And that's definitely the case with real estate. Is every real estate investment pretty much works out, and the ones that you don't invest in are the ones definitely that are not going to work out. So everything works and nothing does it.
I love that. Yeah, there's a great, the great way to get nothing done is to do nothing. That's right. That's a great way to make that happen. And Auntie Joan, thank you, Auntie Joan, for your never-ending stream of wisdom. Take a walk and let the beauty of nature feed your soul. Well said. Well, I love that. And you know what? Hawaii is the place to do that, Auntie Joan. Hawaii is the place to take a walk and let the beauty of nature feed your soul. Heidi, what's yours, and what's it meaning? How is it meaningful to you?
Nothing happens until you decide, make a decision, and watch your life move forward. This is just about making a decision and taking action and inspiring me or you or anyone to just get out of that place of indecision and inaction. And it actually kind of ties into Dylan's quote as well. I had no idea what Dylan's quote was, but yeah, I mean,
that's the beauty of the show, man.
You gotta do something. Make a decision and watch your life move forward.
Make a decision and watch your life move forward. Do something, gang. Now, I mean, can you believe that how similar that these are? I love that synchronicity. I love that synchronicity. It's the best part about it. Thank you, Heidi. That's a great word. Mine is not that related. It's a little bit different, but it's, of course, I'm going to give you my Proverbs. He who has a bountiful eye will be blessed, for he shares his bread with the poor. So I think that goes on to this whole idea of having a bountiful mindset, right? Do you have a bountiful mindset? Do you have a mindset of that's based on abundance, or do you have one that's based on lack? If you have one that's based on abundance, you will share your bread with the poor. If you have an abundance sense, you'll give, and that one who has that is the way to be blessed, is to have a bountiful mindset. And with that, we are like right on the money over here. We're going to have a bountiful mindset and say goodbye. We had this was a great show, really enjoyable, great conversation. Ashley, I want to kind of mention, Ashley, you were missed. Hopefully we will see you in 2 weeks on the next show. You'll be back and join us then. But until then, let's say goodbye. Let's go counterclockwise. Heidi, say goodbye, then Dylan, and then I'll say goodbye.
Aloha, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Have an awesome weekend, everybody.
Have a fantastic weekend, everyone. We're glad that you joined us, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Aloha. Have a good one.